and thanks for clicking on this one. This is a stream I didn't schedule well in advance, and that was somewhat intentional on my part, but I hope that the information I'm going to share on here today will benefit those of you who are looking for ways to achieve your dreams and achieve your goals of becoming a pilot. Now, one of the first things that I would like to start with is if you are somebody who is new and you're coming across this channel for the first time, know that the goal of this channel is to find resources and information that can help you to achieve your aviation dreams. So feel free to subscribe. The next thing I would like to say is, being engaged in this process is very important. That means sharing your own ideas, sharing what you are coming across, your challenges, asking questions, things like that. Those are the ways in which I can help, right? Everyone's situation is different, which means that if I don't get to know what your situation is, of course, there's no way I can really maybe help. Now, generally speaking, most of the videos I make will cater to the common problems that I've seen. And I hope that Imad, yay, thanks for joining. All right. Can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up, or just let me know that you can hear me on the chat, on the the volume is good and all that. Thanks for joining. All right. So the goal of this really is to hopefully connect with you all and share as much information as I can based on somebody who has been in this industry for some time. All right. And hence the reason why I created a Discord as well. So if you haven't joined Discord, please be part of that. That can definitely help. Joshua, thanks for joining. Hi, hope you're doing well. Imad, thanks for joining. Hope I don't mess up your name here. Abel Curry, I think, 2174. Thanks for joining as well. So the goal of this, like I said, is really to answer some questions. And you can see from the title, all right? I actually have, this is generally a common problem that people experience, having money issues, experiencing the difficult aspect of raising funds, right? That is the major challenge and I'm actually messing this up. Sorry. All right. That is the major challenge that people have when it comes to training. So here's something that I want to share with you here. I want to show you some statistics out there. Let me pull this up before, let's see, let me share this window with you. So this is from Pilot Institute. It's a website out there. Let me do that. Actually, let me do this. All right. So it says here 6 reasons why student pilots quit. All right. And you can see it says here nearly 80% of student pilots. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that. Drop out, but preparation can help you continue. Nearly 80%. And actually, I went on Google first. Let me share this one that I found right here. This says as well that nearly 80% right there. Washout rates for aspiring pilots are high, with common figures suggesting up to 80% of students don't get their first license. All right. So the number I just want you to focus on there is 80%. All right. I know that number has always been high. And of course, when I went down the path of the common reasons, which I'm familiar with, but again, just so that I'm not in my own head or coming up with numbers in my mind, right? I decided to also go the extra mile of just checking out some of the reasons. And of course, number one is running out of funds. You have repetitive training and stagnation as number two here, poorly structured training as number three. All right. And then I went on to check here as well. This is another page, 11 reasons why 80% of student pilots drop out of training. This was from 2016, a while ago, right? But you can see number one here is lack of structured training. Then number two is finances. Okay. Just so I'm looking at a question that somebody, is it a question? At the end of my commercial training, but due to whether I can't do the check ride, my stage 7 is going to expire. So I'll have to do it again. How do you deal with delays and frustration in training? That's a great question, Joshua. Honestly, one thing I would say is it is part of it, right? There will be delays in your training, so keep that in mind. It is part of, and that is exactly what I share on here, that a lot of people come up with expectations that they will start training and within 18 months they're all done, or within, however time frame you think, and you're going to be done, but that is not true. There'll be delays, there'll be weather, there's nothing you can do. It's just part of it. The only thing you can do is to continue to focus on what you can control. And what can you control? The study time that you put in, your preparation, right? So which means if you need to continue to look at your procedures, your maneuvers, reciting them, and also going through the steps that you need to accomplish, hopefully on that check ride, that's all you can do. That's all you can control. So keep doing what you can do, all right? So without wasting much time, all right, one thing I want to add on here is, one thing that is very common as to the reason why people drop out, all right, why 80% of pilots drop out, or aspiring pilots actually. One of them is obviously money, and the second one comes down to structured training, or poorly structured training. So I do have my notes here that I actually put down, and I want you, I hope that you guys can share your own struggles as well. I know a big part is money, but I'm going to share some things that you can do. Just bear with me here. The first thing that generally the first thing people do, all right, when they want to start training, especially as an aspiring pilot, the first thing you do is you go on a website, you find schools, you start to look at the cost of training, and then you're put off by the number you see. Okay, the reason why you're put off by the number you see is because you're trying to tackle a big problem all at once. And what do I mean by that? So let's say you go on a website and they tell you, oh, the cost of training is going to be $60,000, right? Or $80,000 or $90,000. It all depends. Whatever the number may be. A lot of people look at that number and then they decide that this is too much for them. They cannot pursue this. But what you want to do is actually try to break this down to manageable steps, right? Things that you can do. And the other problem which I need to address before I can actually get down to resolving this issue is that when you are looking at the cost of training, right? Most of the time, maybe you're looking at the US, you're looking at the UAE, you're looking at Europe, somewhere in Europe out there. You forget that there are other options around you. And this is why a lot of people will end up in the wrong places. What do I mean by end up in the wrong places? You look for a school online that is, that you desire, right? You find the school, you then realize that, oh, the cost is too high. Then the next thing you do is to find a cheap school that you can go to. The problem with that approach is when you find a cheap school, yes, you will think it's cheaper than what than the other comparisons that you have out there or other schools out there. But you have to be very careful because you may end up in a place that actually will cost you more money. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of this number 2 reason that is here, or number 1 actually, right here, number 2, right? Repetitive training or stagnation, which is number 1 on this website, which is a lack of structured training. The reason why this is important is because a cheap flight school doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to complete your training, right? And the reason is because of maybe it's poorly structured, maybe they do not have the right facilities, and sometimes a lot of these schools will promise you that, oh, you're going to finish with X amount of money in a very short period of time. And then you give them your money, you start this process, and then what happens? You're stuck, right? Because you've given them this money that you have that you've really struggled to put together, and then you're stuck with them because you can't leave because they have your money now, and you are training and you are not seeing the progress. So you keep putting more money into this hole that you can never really fill up because you have chosen the wrong place. So to really put this together, the first thing you want to do isn't necessarily to find the cheapest flight school. The first thing you want to do is actually to find a school that meets your requirement. And that is why you need to set a goal for what you're trying to achieve. The money will always be an important factor, but that won't be the only thing. So don't look at the cheapest flight school out there. Don't look at the school that will save you the most amount of money and things like that. The goal is to find a school that actually works for what you're trying to achieve. So in this case, if your goal is you want to be a commercial pilot, you want to be an airline pilot, the first thing you want to do is to actually find a school that can get you that within your within an area in which you can afford. In this case, a region in which you can afford. And even if you're in Africa, because I saw your message, I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but I know you say you're in Africa, but remember that there are schools out there in Africa as well, right? There are flight schools in Africa that provide good training. A lot of pilots in South Africa, there's some I'm from Nigeria, so there's some in Nigeria as well. And the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of people focus on schools abroad when you can't afford it, right? Then you are chasing something that you can't afford. And at home, I know it can be difficult to even put the money together, even back where you live or in your country. But the difference is that you stand a chance of reducing your cost to a very good extent. What do I mean by that? So when you look at the cost of training abroad, you haven't factored in the cost of living, transportation, and getting yourself to just survive, whether it's paying rent, whether it's the feeding allowance that you would need. All that cost adds up. So the cost of training might be 70,000 or 80,000 or 90,000, but the reality is that you haven't accounted for these other extra expenses, that you probably haven't thought about yet. So by the time you had another 20, 30, 40,000, depending on how long your training is, for just living expenses, your 70,000 becomes $110,000 that you now need to have. So the point here is you want to focus less on schools that might be out of reach. Okay, please let me know if this is making sense in the chat section. All right, is it making sense? Just type yes in the comment section. I would appreciate it. I hope this is, because this is the thing about YouTube that sometimes makes it hard for me to get the feedback that I need from you guys, right? To see that you guys are actually catching up on what I'm saying. So where am I going with this? The point that I'm trying to make to you is start from where you are. Find a school in your area that you can start with. Don't let us make this more difficult than it should be, right? Don't let us make this more difficult than it should be. It's already an expensive process. Thank you. I can see a lot of yeses in there. It's already an expensive process. It's already an expensive journey to embark on. So instead of trying to focus on a school that is way outside of your reach, why don't you focus on the school that is within reach? A school in the region you are in. It might not be your country, but in the region. So if you're in Africa, maybe find schools in the African region where the cost of training can sometimes be a bit lower, especially when you think about the living expenses that you would have to incur. If you come to the US for flight training, every month you are paying close to $1,500 to maybe $2,000, depending on where you are training, right? For renting. Now, you can split rent with other people. You can have a roommate, things like that to save. But the point here is on just living expenses, you will need close to that $1,500 per month, which means that is outside of just training. So even if you're splitting your rent, let's go by the route that, let's go by the fact that you go the cheap route. So you find a roommate, you guys split everything in half, right? The cost of just living alone will still be around that $1,500. Thanks for the likes, by the way, I appreciate it. That cost of living alone will still be around $1,500 every single month, which means you do that for 10 months, you have $15,000 just for living expenses. So if your training takes, 2 years, you're looking at almost $34,000 plus for just living, for just surviving. And that does not include your cost of living. So to answer this question, because this is one of the biggest questions that I get every time, which is on the title of this video, which is, how can I afford, flight training? Don't look at the schools that are way outside of where you are. The best thing you can do is to start from where you live. So if you're in a country that has flight training or flight schools, start with that. Because the cost of living where you are will still be cheaper than you flying abroad to do the training. Remember what I said at the beginning of this video, the goal is sometimes misprioritized. And what that means is that you're placing the priority of training abroad over getting your certificate or becoming a pilot. That is the ultimate goal. So if that is the ultimate goal, why don't we focus on the things we can control? Let me tell you something. A lot of times we think, oh, it's all about just having the money for training. But guess what? Sometimes you have the money for training, but you still will not achieve the goal. And the reason why you haven't achieved the goal is not because you don't have the money. It's generally because maybe, and this is coming from experience, people don't get into the school that they are trying to get into, or they do not get a visa to, especially for the US, right? You have the money, you have the funds, you've applied, the school has accepted you, but guess what? The embassy still fails to issue the visa to you. So what do you do in that case, right? Let me see. I'm trying to catch up on the questions here, but we'll be able to apply to major airlines after completing training locally, because the airlines here in my country are not that good. I am going to come back to that. All right. Let me answer that just so I don't miss it. So you want to apply to major airlines after you've finished your training. The reality is this, right? Even if you are in the US, once you finish your training, you cannot stay unless you change your status. How do you change your status? You cannot come as a student to the US on a student visa and become and get hired by an airline. It doesn't happen that way. The way it works is that you have to change your status from a student visa to a permanent resident, or maybe become a citizen before the airline hires you. But in order to go through those steps I've just shared, it takes either somebody filing for you, like a family member, a wife, a husband, or it takes a job filing for you. Unfortunately, most of the airlines here will not file for you. The few instances which, as I've seen in the past, will be people who get hired by flight school, and then after a long time of staying with the school and working for the school, literally paying your dues, if that makes sense, if you get what I mean, that is when the flight school will then say, you know what, let's file for you. And that is very rare. And I'm talking about you spending 5 years plus sometimes before they then choose to file for you. So there is going to be a long period of time where you've gotten all your ratings, you've gotten all your qualifications, but you are just hoping that this school hires you or files for you. So the point here is, it sounds good to work for a major airline, especially abroad. It sounds good and make good money and all that. But one thing I want you to understand is that there are opportunities in your country as well. And until you start this aviation journey, you won't get to see those opportunities. Let me give you a good example of an opportunity that I'm talking about. For those of you that might be from Nigeria or Africa, I have friends who fly in different parts of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. I have friends that fly for Egypt, Tanzania, things like that, right? And you would realize that the opportunities out there are sometimes quite different from what you would expect. You know, here in the US, UK, and the likes, everybody wants to work for the big airlines. But over there in Africa, you realize that because the opportunities, the ability to become a pilot is so limited, right? Not a lot of people can become pilots. You actually can earn a very good living in that country that you're in. Okay? I hope I'm still communicating with you guys. I don't know why the thing looks blurry, but all right. Okay, looks like I've kind of lost everything out here, and it seemed like, okay, so let's continue. So in Nigeria, I have friends that work for private companies, right? And they make over 10,000 plus per month in dollars, by the way. They pay them in dollars. All right, over $10,000 per month just working for a private company. Even the airlines out there, they have all raised their pay now. So the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, the airline might not be like the other airlines you see online, right? On YouTube, United, Delta, all these other airlines out there, British Airways and the likes, right? But the point here is, would you achieve your goal and would you earn a good standard of living as a pilot? I can confidently tell you that the answer to that is yes. I can confidently tell you that the answer is yes. As of today, as of right now, pilots in different regions in Africa, especially, as long as you're not, I don't know what, if you're flying a Cessna Caravan or something, I don't know what they make, but I'm talking about the airline pilots. I'm talking about people who fly for private companies. They are earning really good money. So don't focus on, oh, I have to go and train abroad, or I have to go and get my training done. Start from where you are. A lot of times, this question that I get every time, I don't have money, all stems from the fact that you are looking at training in the US or training in the UK or training somewhere in UAE, and they require that you bring $120,000. Definitely, there's no way nobody has I don't know, maybe some people do have it. Don't get me wrong, some people do have that money, but most people do not have $120,000 sitting around. So for that reason, would you then give up and say that this is not for you? Now, to go back to your question about flying for a local airline, do you know, and by the way, this is the question that was asked by Imad, right? The airline may not be great, but you are in Africa. One thing that I love about Africa is that you can almost work anywhere in Africa. As long as you're a qualified pilot. I have friends, again, back to what I'm saying. I have friends who work for airlines out of Cotonou, right? Cote d'Ivoire, right? I have friends who work out of there. They are Nigerians, but they work they work in Cote d'Ivoire, right? I have friends who are Nigerians who work in UAE. So the point I'm trying to make is that, and by the way, the reason why you're thinking this way is because you are not yet qualified yet. Because once you get into this industry and you start training, you would start to see the opportunities that abound. You start to see the opportunities in aviation around you, locally, abroad, and the likes. So the thing is, if you are waiting for a cadet program, know that sometimes it can be a very long shot. Why? It's highly competitive. Even though I talk about cadet programs a lot on my channel, they are very competitive. You have a lot of people who are sitting down waiting for these opportunities. And I'm talking about really dedicated people, really smart people who have done everything they can to get a shot at this. Then let's add to the fact that most of these cadet programs only would focus on taking people from the region that the cadet program runs. So if you are in the UK, you can apply to all the, British Airways and Aer Lingus and all this TUI and all that, right? TUI. But if you are not a UK resident or a UK citizen, then you're out of luck. Then, of course, we can go to different regions like that, where they only focus on hiring people who are residents, and that makes sense. But if you are from Africa, right? I'm from Africa, so I can talk confidently and let you know that I've gone through this process so many times before I became a pilot. And even now that I go on looking for opportunities for people in Africa, for example, it is difficult, almost non-existent. Why? The government there isn't just thinking long term. We're always just focusing on the short term. Whereas the Western world is planning 2027, 2028, 2029, 5 years in advance, and they are staffing and hiring and thinking ahead for that, for the organization, for the airline. Hence the reason why they run these kind of programs. But are you telling me that specifically, for example, in Nigeria, right? Are you telling me that the government can't afford to send 50 people or 30 people, let's just say 30 people for training? They can. Absolutely. We have the funds to do it. We even have flight schools in the country. Maybe 3 flight schools at this point. So the point here is you need to look within, right? If you cannot get into a career program because you are outside of the regions in which all these programs do run, right? And you are not a resident and you don't live in those countries in which you have the opportunity to apply to the programs, let's focus on the ones that we can apply to. Now, let's now talk about money again, right? Because this conversation really boils down to money. We are not going to start with $70,000 for training. I don't know how much training will cost you, depending on which school you're looking at, depending on the region, right? I don't know how much the training will cost you, but one thing that you can start with is, can we look at just the cost of getting your private pilot's license, your PPL, right? I see you responded, I'm from Pakistan. Yeah, right. I don't know what schools are out there in Pakistan. Okay, I don't know if you have flight schools, but if there are no flight schools in Pakistan, look for flight schools in the region around you as well. What is the cost of training out there? Is it $40,000 to get your, I don't know how much it will cost to get your PPL, but in the US, for example, generally speaking, they say about $20,000 will get you your PPL, give or take. It could be less than that. Of course, it could be slightly more than that, depending on the school, but about $20,000. Now, we are approaching this problem more objectively, which means we are looking at it as, okay, we are not looking at a $70,000 or $100,000 all at once, because that alone can be shattering, right? You think about it like, how can I get $70,000? It's a lot. But what about $20,000? Can I get $20,000 just for my PPL? Okay, sure, my family may not have the money, but what can I do to raise or save or get a loan, right, to get $20,000? This becomes a bit more manageable. That is the point I'm trying to drive at, right? Instead of trying to look at the whole $70,000 or $80,000 or $100,000 as a bulk of money that you need to put together, when you break it down into little steps, right? The first step is getting your private pilot license. What we need is $20,000. How can we come up with that? Then we start to solve based on the necessary steps we need to take to achieve the ultimate goal of becoming a pilot. Hence the reason why I also suggest that look for schools within your area, within your region, right? Within the continent you are in, because generally speaking, that will be the cheapest. Well, might not be the cheapest, but could be the cheapest route to go, if that makes sense. Just so this is clear, could be the cheapest. I think I need to highlight that. The reason why I say that is sometimes you'll find schools that are way more expensive in your region than what you find abroad. So keep that in mind, okay? So in Europe, somebody says it's only 7,000 euros. I'm guessing just to get your private, okay? I'm guessing that's for the PPL. So 7,000 euros seem more doable than 60,000 euros or 70,000 euros. And if I only need 7,000 euros to start training, can I get a part-time job? Yeah, the part-time job may not pay me a lot of money, but at least it starts to add up. Right? Okay, so IMAD is saying $35,000 for the whole training, the entire training. So I'm guessing from 0 to CPL, all right, which is commercial pilot's license, is about $35,000. That sounds a lot more doable and achievable than $70,000. I hope this is all making sense. And if it is, please let me know in the comment section. Let me drop a thumbs up. That is how I get to know if this is making sense. Because we all focus on working for these big airlines out there. And there's nothing wrong with aspiring and dreaming big. But one thing I want to tell you is that sometimes the route to get there will be different from the typical route that somebody who was born in the country in which that airline operates will have to take. Give you a good example. People who can apply to the British Airways program that are UK citizens or residents of the UK have a different opportunity than somebody who is born in a different region who cannot. But does that mean that a person outside of the region doesn't have the opportunity to become a pilot? Absolutely not. So here's the thing. A lot of times I have seen, and I can list a lot of names of girls and guys who are now working for Fly Dubai, who are now working for Emirates, right? That's one of the top airlines in the world as well. Cathay Pacific is another one, right? These are airlines, just so you know, these are airlines that won't take cadets because you do not meet the requirements to be of those countries, right? To go through their cadet programs, but they will take you as a foreigner to work when you are qualified. And that is the key thing that you need to understand. Once you get your ratings, say you go through the routes like Ahmad just mentioned, $35,000, you get your ratings, you start working for that airline that you claim is not that good. Ahmad, you actually said that, so I'm using you as an example. I'm not trying to attack you in any way, right? So you start working for that airline in Pakistan that you say it's not that great, but guess what? They fly a jet, right? I'm hoping they do fly jets out there. You fly 737, you fly the Airbus 320, 321, and the likes, and you get the experience. Once you get the experience, now you can walk into these other airlines, whether it's Emirates, whether it's Fly Dubai, whether it's Cathay Pacific, all these airlines out there. They are constantly looking for qualified candidates. And as long as you can get through their interview and pass the assessments, they will file for you to become a person who can work and live legally in the country. The US doesn't really do this, and I don't think the UK does this as much, especially hiring foreigners. And the reason is because of the pool of talents that are already existent in the country. I hope this is all making sense, guys, and girls who might be watching, okay? Remember that the pool of talent that exists in the US is already large. They have a large training facility in terms of flight schools. They have ability to sponsor people to go to training. People are able to get loans to go to training. And when these people finish, they take on the jobs that are available. So the regulation here tries to protect the people who are in the US, who have the rights and legal rights to stay and work in the US. Hence the reason why the US doesn't really hire foreigners, experienced pilots from abroad, to work unless they have the right to live and work in the US. I hope that makes sense. On the other hand, countries like UAE or airlines like Cathay Pacific or the Emirates or Fly Dubai and the likes, South African Airways and the likes, they sometimes would hire foreigners, even in Nigeria as well, by the way. They sometimes hire foreigners to fly their airplanes because they don't have enough qualified people in that region that are experienced. And that is the key thing that you need to take away from this. So even though you may say that the airline that you have in your region may not be great or may not be as good, the point here is, can you get some experience through that airline? The experience you get is what will then open the world to you. And when the world is open to you, guess what? You take all the opportunities that exist, whether you want to be in the UAE region, you want to be in Asia, you want to be in Africa, right? The opportunities become a bit more. But if you are waiting for a cadet program to take you and you are from Nigeria, you're out of luck. or you're from I don't know what other region, countries that don't have any of these kind of programs, then you're out of luck. So that is why it is important to start with what you have. Hi, Coolest William, thanks for joining. All right, let me see. I think I've missed some questions here. Let's see. Sir, you're a legend. We appreciate your consistency in helping aspiring pilots. Thank you, Daniel. I have Banker in US. Do we require green card or citizen to work as a pilot or instructor? You need the green card. That is correct. I hope I answered that question. All right, you need the green card to work and or be a citizen to work as a pilot or an instructor. They won't hire you unless you have those things. Is 39 too old to be sponsored by British Airways? No, 39 is not too old to be sponsored by BA. All right, they've hired people over the age of 40. Okay, and 39 is not too old. Hello, Nabila. All right, thanks for joining. Hi, Mad. Thanks for joining again. I know I've kind of used you as a reference, and thanks for sharing what you know. This is one of the things that, again, this is how we can benefit from this. When people from different regions share their own experiences and challenges, this is how we all can benefit. It makes this community even better. All right. And remember, if you haven't joined the Discord, that is another place that I try to go on there, go live regularly. When I say live, I'm talking about just being available to answer your questions and help as much people as I can. All right. Let's see. I'm in Europe, 7,000 euros. The entire training, 35,000. I already answered that. I'm from Bangladesh. Have done my 12th study from South Asia. Where should I go? Please tell all about scholarship, please. Considering you're from Bangladesh, right, Nabila, one thing I would say is that I honestly do not know of any programs out there or scholarship programs out there. The only one I can think about is the what is it called again? I'm trying to. Okay, I think that's it. Sorry, I had to think of the spelling there. This is one program that I have heard about, but I don't know if it applies to you guys from that region. Honestly, you would have to look. It's scholarship holders. Let's see. Let me zoom this out here. I haven't looked at this in a while, so I'm just trying to, and this may not be the best time to be looking at this, but eligibility requirements. Let's see. I know this might be small for you guys, but bear with me. I'm trying to find the list of countries. I don't know if Bangladesh is part of the list here, to be honest. Access denied. Interesting. 2023, 2024. Yeah, I'll need to spend more time on this, to be honest. So I'm not sure if Bangladesh would be part of the countries that they sponsor, but this is the only program I know that accepts people from different regions, and I am not sure if Bangladesh is part of those countries. Okay. This is the name of the program. You can go ahead and maybe do your own research on it. All right. A stipendium on GARICOM applications 2025, 2026. Let's see. And they offer some flight training as well, but sometimes they don't run that every time as well, you know. So you just have to kind of look. All right. You have to look. All right. Let's see. Just because Area Cadet program offers $1,500, I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. Oh yeah, absolutely. You take every opportunity that you can, especially with if that is what is available to you, you know. CPL in South Africa, I think from what I've heard, the last numbers up to CPL, I think it's close to 80,000 or 70,000, somewhere there. Of course, it depends on the school, but it's around that price range, I think. Hi, Mad. I'm glad that you are able to use the information that I've shared with you here, and you can use it to plan for the future. So one thing I always say is start with what you have, start with where you are. Start with what you have, start with where you are. Don't wait on all these cadet programs. Sometimes, especially if you are not somebody who lives in that region, you don't have the residence requirements and things like that, they will, most of them all require that, they all have that requirement, right? They all have the requirement, all the good ones out there. And most of them are good, don't get me wrong. But they all have the requirement that you are a citizen or you have the right to live there without restriction. And that is what takes out a lot of people, right? Especially from regions that may not have any opportunities like that. So spend time, work on the thing that you can control. Okay, break it down, look at the cost of training. Let's break it down step by step. The first step will be to get my private pilot's license. And how much would that cost? Okay, so like somebody said in Europe, 7,000 euros. Somebody else said, you know, the whole training for their region is $35,000. Yes, the airline there might not be great. Yes, the opportunities might be limited, but that is what you can start with. Remember, once you have experience, you can then find opportunities abroad. But without the experience, without the qualifications, nobody will look at you, right? And I actually had some notes here and I'm not even using my notes. Isn't that great? Let's see. Let me see. Talking points that I have. I think this is important to mention. Remember that the reason why a lot of people also, I think I've mentioned the structured aspect of training. Like if you go to a school that isn't structured, that can actually cost you more money. Hence the reason why you shouldn't just look for the cheapest flight schools. Always look for schools that have some structure and some reputation. Because if you go to a school that isn't structured and they promise you heaven and earth based on how much you will spend and how long it will take you, you may find yourself in a situation where you end up spending way more and actually not achieving anything. And this happens a lot in flight training. So keep that in mind. The other thing to remember is that weather delays would happen, right? Aircraft will break down. Hopefully it doesn't break down while you're flying, right? But what I mean by that is they would have to go down for maintenance, right? So they would have to maintain them and things like that. So you need to plan for those type of delays. Somebody just asked, you know, they are about to do their check ride and they've had some weather delays. That is part of the challenges of training. Okay. The other important thing, instructor quality. We don't really talk about this a lot because as an instructor myself, even though I don't actively fly and train people, all right, that is important. I teach people, right, on the ground aspect of things, but I don't actively fly and train people. And that's, but on the quality of instruction, that is so important because if you have an instructor who doesn't give you the time that you deserve or that you need, okay, it can be a problem. Let me share a success story with you guys here. And I don't think is online right now, but this was my student. And I'm going to my Instagram page. He actually sent me a message. We were chatting just yesterday. Let's see. All right. His name is I don't want to say his name actually. Maybe I should. It's not a bad thing. This is what he said. I'm going to read it to you. So he currently flies somewhere in Africa. What's the name of the he flies for TAG Airlines, and is currently on the 737. I just want to read the important part. He said, thanks to you, my instructor, and thank you very much for the moments you pulled me when I was most blind, you know. And the reason why he said that is because I remember was a great student, right? But sometimes being able to devote extra time to your student because you know the areas in which they have challenges can sometimes change the path of the person. And that requires your instructor to be dedicated to know, you know, how can I help? It's not about getting the hours, because unfortunately, most people, and I'm not going to say most people, generally speaking, there are people out there who just want to focus on getting their hours. So remember, you get your CPL, let's say you become an instructor. Some people just want to get their hours. So what they want to do is fly as much as they can to get their hours, and then they move on to the airlines. Well, how do they get the hours? They get the hours by training other aspiring pilots or people who are going through training. And if their goal of the instructor is just to get the hours, guess what? Quality of instruction is what? Is in the toilet. If that makes sense. So if all they do is just to fly, they want to schedule you to fly as much as they can so that they can just get the hours and go. Guess what? The quality of instruction is not great. Hence why some people will end up struggling and they get no help. So that is why quality of instruction or the instructor itself can play a big role in your ability to achieve your goals. Another person, Thomas, I'm not sure he's not on here, but Thomas is somebody who I've known him for some time now. And he was just sharing with me that during training, his instructor seemed to prioritize other things over teaching, right? So guess what? Teaching takes the backseat, and the progress that they should be able to get during training is kind of hampered because of the fact that this other person, the instructor who's supposed to be in charge, has prioritized other things. So all your colleagues, even though you guys started together, may end up moving ahead, not because you are not good or you're not a good student, but it's just because the instructor who is leading you along the way hasn't prioritized some things. So I think that is something that we need to talk about, right? That needs to be mentioned. So the school, of course, is important. The quality of instruction you get is even more important, right? That is based sometimes on the instructor you have. Of course, I've mentioned weather as well. And then the other thing is this that I think a lot of people also get wrong. Even though this whole video is about money, the solution to your problem, by the way, if this is making sense, please let me know again. Just type yes. That's one way to engage. If you have questions, please leave it in the comment section as well, or the chat section. That's the way I can answer these questions. But the thing is that I want to add to this is that sometimes you think money will solve all your problems, but remember, money is just part of what you need. Is part of the solution to the problem of, in this case, achieving your goals, but it's not the only thing. But as an aspiring pilot who doesn't have any money, the only thing you think about is money, all right? And the money that you don't have, because that's what you lack. But the reality is that a lot of people do start training with a bunch of money and are unable to actually finish training. And why is that? What do you think is the reason why people who have money, they have the ability to fund the training, but for some reason, they are unable to complete training? They don't have money problems, but they have other problems, whether it's lack of focus, whether it is lack of good instruction, right, from an instructor, whether it's lack of a plan and just being able to set out a goal that they want to achieve and go after it. Because remember, flight training, especially for people who might not have lived outside of home, you might be young and not have a sense of direction just yet, but you think it's cool to be a pilot, so you go enroll in a flight school and you have a bunch of money, and of course they throw a bunch of money on your training, but because you have lacked the discipline that you need to succeed, then that can be a problem. So money is just a part of this. And let's now talk about things that we don't even think about. What about if you start training and you start to struggle? That happens every time, where people would start flight training and for some reason they are unable to, perform well. Not because they are not focused, not because they don't have money, but just because the psychomotor skills aren't just there. And I've seen that too. So remember, money is important, but it is not the only thing that will solve this problem. The goal of achieving your dreams, the goal of achieving this pilot, being a pilot, becoming an airline pilot, money won't just be the only thing you need. There's a lot more, but I know money is one of the important aspects of it. All right. And like I said, once you get into the world of aviation, once you start training, things become a little bit more clearer, right? You start to network, and that's part of why some of you are here listening to what I'm talking about, right? I'm sure you guys have other important things to do, but you are here listening to this, and I thank you for that. But remember that at the end of it all, you need to take action, right? And what does that mean? Networking is important, right? Reaching out to groups like this is important. Asking the right questions is important. But taking action, which means find a school, right? In fact, if you are on here, okay, and if you're part of if you join a Discord group, of course, what you can do is, if you are somebody who is, you've been maybe struggling with a school or finding a school, or you've been struggling with the money aspect of it. Remember, let's break it down. What will it cost? What will it cost you to get your PPL or your private? The first step. What would it cost you to do to get that done? The second question we need to answer is, where would you get this done? So find a school. Know the cost of the first stage, which is that PPL aspect, right? For whatever your country provides or the region provides, and share it with me, or share it in the chat section. Okay. When you share it, if you share it, you can share a screenshot of the school. I think you should be able to do that. I'm not sure, but just let me know. Share that information in there in the chat section. And if you do that, what will happen is that, one, I would look at it and look at this. I can look at the school, look at the program, and of course, even look at the cost of it as well. I can't do anything about the cost, of course, but it's just to help you see if it makes sense. If you need somebody to help you do that, I can do that. I'm not the only person. There are other people in these groups who have already gotten there. Just so you know, everybody in that group aren't all looking for opportunities. Some of them already have the opportunities, and I intentionally have these people in there also because their experience in training, their experience going through cadet selection will help the next girl or guy. So being able to participate, right, will go a long way. Let's see, the other thing I want to cover here, I already talked about this aspect, breaking it down into manageable steps. Remember, the goal is make it simple, break it down so that you can take steps that makes it more manageable. Okay. I think that's really all I wanted to cover for this one. Of course, there's way more stuff we can talk about. But for the sake of time, I will just stop right here for now. Let's see. It really helped. Okay, that I think I already answered that. Hello from India. Hi, Eurocore. Welcome. Will you be doing the Q&A in the Discord at 6? William from Sava. Yep. I will be there. I will be on there at 6. I will be there on 6. Yep. And by the way, you guys may wonder, why do I have the Discord, right? Again, the goal is to get you. A lot of times people ask questions, I miss them, right? Or if I go to my YouTube now, there are a bunch of questions or comments that I miss, not because I'm going back to work tonight or tomorrow morning, well, tonight, but then I start working tomorrow morning. And once I start working, I get busy and it's hard to catch up, right? To start responding to comments and replying and typing and all that stuff. But with Discord, what it does is that everybody, I can set an event and I can come on there and share exactly and answer your questions, right? So I don't have to turn on the light. I don't have to do all that stuff. I can just get on the phone and chat with everybody at once. That is the benefit of the Discord, I think. And I hope it works out, because the goal is to have an engaging community that really does what I'm preaching, in this case, help people achieve their goals and share the good information that I try to do on here. So that is the reason for the Discord aspect. So if you're part of it, I'm sure you will benefit as well. Let me see. Will you be doing a Q&A? Okay, yes. Somebody said Indigo. What about the Air India cadet program? They only take, yes, that's correct. 3VL 69. They only take people from India, just so you know. So that's correct. Good day. I'm just joining the live. I want to know if there's any scholarship program for Liberty University for the aviation school. None that I know of. Pilot D Aviation. I do not know of any program for Liberty University. I know the university, but I do not know of any scholarship program. They may have something, honestly, because it's a school out here in the US. They may have something, but at this point, I am not aware of any. And maybe because I haven't looked, all right? How exactly is one meant to know a well-structured school? What are we looking for when looking for a school? All right, Priscilla, all right. When it comes to looking for a structured school, one of the things that you want to think about is the first thing is, can you actually even visit a school? Because it depends on the region you're in. If you cannot visit a school, then you have to go based on the online reputation of the school. And a good school will have good online reputation. And what does that mean? If you go to their website, right, start with that. How long has the school been existent? How long has it been in business? All right. What programs do they offer? What are the reviews of the school are? And by the way, you would have to do this research, because that is what you will have to do if you are unable to visit the school. It would be nice if you can, if it's a place that you can visit or go to. But if you cannot, then I would say that you have to just do your due diligence on the school via online community, honestly. The other thing to also think about is the school, one, approved by the FAA, and what programs are they approved for? So generally speaking, a school that is, let's say, has a 140, and by the way, I'm speaking for the US. Okay, I'm speaking for the US. The 141 program that they offer in the US is highly structured and kind of regulated by the FAA. There's the Part 61, right, which is less structured. It's still structured to an extent, but just less structured. A school that offers Part 141 program generally has a better curriculum, well-organized structure in their training. So that's something to think about. But again, remember, the school itself, there's so many schools that have this 141 program, that they provide this training, they provide a 141 program, but that doesn't mean that they are great schools. And that is where you just need to do your own due diligence by looking at the school, looking at their reputation, looking at the programs they offer, their success rate, or people who have actually graduated from the school. Do you have access to them? And talk to people. That is really what you can do. And most importantly though, when you talk to the school or when you are in contact with the school, the way they respond will let you know if this school actually has, if they do business well. There's some schools you send messages to, they don't respond for a very long time, right? Or they don't even respond at all. Whereas there's some schools where they try to give you as much information that you will need to make a good decision. And those are things that you need to consider. I'm not saying that there's no one thing that you can look at. You have to be willing to just make a decision based on these various factors that I've shared. All right. So that is all I'm going to cover on here. I'm going to be on the Discord in about an hour, right? Maybe 59 minutes. I will be on there. So if you want to be part of that as well, feel free to join. You get the opportunity to talk if you have something to say. So we get to chat, because this sometimes can be a bit boring, just reading the chats instead of actually having a conversation. So sometimes that's why I'm hoping that this Discord thing works out well. Anyway, I'll see you there if you decide to join, but if you don't, again, have a great day, and I'll see you in a future video. Please don't forget to drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss any of my